tonight's video, I wanted to break down an article that I found, a scientific article that I found that took MRI scans of individuals who self-reported having ASMR-induced feelings towards ASMR-induced stimuli. And the reason I wanted to break this down is, number one, to have more of an ASMR-y feel for a video, and also because I wanted to break down the the brain structures that are affiliated with or in direct relationship with ASMR, and to also detail what specific triggers are actually incredibly effective for triggering biological responses in a viewer. So, this study was conducted in Dartmouth College in New Hampshire, and the participants, there was 25, they basically put out in a discussion forum an invitation to go and take a study in their college, and when they received applicants, they informed them that they looked for participants in the northeastern region of the United States. And when they found these participants, they managed to collect 25 participants to participate in the study. And when they participated in the study, they were informed that they would have to pay for their own airfare and for the hotel and whatnot, that they would have to provide the means to arrive at the college. However, this was actually a misleading statement, because ultimately the college itself was going to fund these participants' airfare and hotel stay. But the reason why they told them that they wouldn't do it initially was to avoid people who would falsely report having ASMR feelings to declare that they had ASMR and get a free trip to New Hampshire. And so they tried to make sure that there wasn't any sort of, misleading variable within their study. And so that ended up taking place. I think only 25 original applicants applied, and then 18 were flown out, and then I believe only 11 completed the test, and one of their tests had to be thrown out of the 11 that completed the entire exam, because that person had excessive head motion, which impaired the results, and so their results would ultimately offer or be a potential confounder within the study, as being one that's just, or not a confounder, but a sort of inaccurate study or an accurate result. And so obviously, to start from the very top, everyone, and if not everyone, but most people know, especially within those that are already familiar with the genre, that ASMR is called autonomous sensory meridian response. It's an online neologism, or neologism, however it's pronounced, and a neologism is basically a newly coined word or a newly coined phrase, which labels auditory and visual stimuli that cause minor euphoria within the spectators. And this minor euphoria has been likened to that of musical frisson. What musical frisson is, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, because I'm not a music major, but what a music frisson is basically a musical structure that is going to elicit a sense of anticipatory reaction in a person, and then it's quickly followed when an emotional peak in a song happens, or when an emotional peak in any sort of musical structure happens. That sense of peaking kind of releases the sense of anticipation and just sort of flushes you out. Likewise, the sense of relief is found within the ASMR sensation, where it's a sense of releasing some stress and anxiety, and it potentially could offer people with PTSD, anxiety, or any sort of stress disorder, relief for their sense of heightened feelings, heightened tensions, and by introducing more gentle sounds, more artificial personal attention, and by more simulated touch, which gives people a sense of affirmation, gives people a sense of feeling accepted, confirmed, and also, but most importantly, it biologically triggers parts of the brain that are related with relaxation, related to euphoria, and related to more stress relieving aspects. So let me just scroll on down. So it is hypothesized that brain structures related to relaxation will demonstrate higher activation within those watching ASMR-inducing stimuli than in individuals without ASMR-inducing stimuli. Let's see. Gentle sounds, artificial personal attention, and visual triggers produce a physical reaction through direct auditory and visual stimuli. Thus, brain functions must react in coordination with their sensory information. I also like the little Russian hat I put on my microphone. So, participants were individuals who self-reported experiencing ASMR from ASMR-inducing stimuli. There were 3 women and 7 men. Their age range was between 18 and 33 years old, with their age mean defaulting at 23.6 years old. So that means they took every single age in that group and divided it by the number of people in that group, and that was the age that was the most popular. Their socioeconomic status, ability, and mental health demographics were not recorded or disclosed. So I believe that for this study, one critique I would give it would be that they should have disclosed the mental health demographic, because that could potentially aid in their better studying ASMR and how it induces reaction in their viewers. I believe that if someone is far more neurologically sensitive, or potentially just someone that is a little more, who has a stress or anxiety disorder, they will react better to ASMR than someone who is more neurotypical. This was just a non-equivalent control group post-test survey, which basically means that there wasn't a control group, which was that there wasn't a group of people that were not watching ASMR that the group of people watching ASMR were being compared to. The way this procedure was being conducted was that, or the way this process was being conducted was that they took images of the individual's brain, of all the or rather not images, but they took they took functional imaging, they took anatomical imaging, and they did 3 functional runs. So basically, they did a couple of splicing of the brain. Not splicing, I'm poorly phrasing myself. But basically, they took images through MRI scans that were hooked up onto their head. It wasn't, it's not like a CAT scan. It's not anything that's a major machine. It's more so those little patches that they use to monitor brain function. And they sort of sliced off, they highlighted, is a better word, they highlighted different parts of the brain and analyzed those parts individually, but they also took a whole brain coverage by making sure that they took images of the entire brain to make sure that they can more completely analyze the complete activation of the brain. And what they found, they included videos from Heather Feather, they included videos from Gentle Whispering, they included videos from just unintentional ASMR. I will leave a link to the study in the description. If I can recall correctly, they had 5 full-length, hour-long videos. And those individuals that participated had to choose their favorite segments from those videos, 7-minute segments. And they narrowed it down to 5-minute segments after a 3rd round. And each time they narrowed it down, or each time they proceeded with a study, they would measure their brain function. into 3 different categories. These participants also had boxes before them with 3 displaying buttons. One of the buttons was a baseline button, which basically means that you feel nothing. You're neither relaxed nor you're not feeling tingles. The second button was that you're feeling relaxed, but you don't feel minor euphoria or tingles. And the third button was that you felt minor euphoria or tingles. And obviously, as you would assume, the baseline button was actually unpredictably the second most common button to be pressed. I believe it ranked at 47%. Let's see. No, 40.5% of the time, participants reported experiencing baseline sensations, and relaxation without tingles comprised 51.4% of the time, and minor euphoria for 5.9% of the time. So tingles obviously were a great minority, or a vast minority, or a small minority of the time spent in the study, that people really didn't feel it all that frequently, but when they felt it, that's when intense brain activation was elicited. During relaxed periods, there wasn't that much brain activity. There was significant brain activity going on, but it wasn't highly significant. When it came to the minor euphoria or tingles, there was highly significant brain function going on. Now let me go down to the regions of interest that were in this study. So, the scans from various moments showed increase in brain activation in auditory and visual cortices, obviously. Relaxing moments compared to baseline moments displayed obviously small and significant cluster of activation in the MPFC, but not in the ACC. I'm just going to completely skip over this jargon. This was completely jargon induced, but basically there's select clusters in the brain associated with the auditory and visual clusters or cortices, but clusters within those areas that respond highly to ASMR. So there is a biological underpinning of ASMR that validates the feelings that one gets, where it isn't just a possible need for perhaps personal attention, although there were also studies conducted that found that people actually also responded well to the simulated personal attention, that the responses they would feel over being flattered were also elicited. But it's also because it is a natural biological underpinning that one feels when one has their auditory or visual cortices stimulated. In fact, touch or simulated touch was also recorded. It wasn't included in the analysis, but it was recorded and noted, and people also had significant brain activation when these processes, or when these actions were being performed by the person behind the screen. So let's see. So my only critique really of this study was that they shouldn't have overlooked the mental health portion of it, because I think that could greatly influence the study, and I think the fact that they overlooked it could potentially create confounders for their study, where if someone, for example, has greater mental health issues than someone beside them, they could possibly react to ASMR far more than the person beside them, and if they don't recognize what the difference between those two individuals are, then they're probably going to chalk it up to an incorrect hypothesis or an incorrect judgment. And another potential confounder is also when the individuals that were participating in the study, they had this mechanics on their head. They had things monitoring them, they had equipment that they could watch, they had auditory stimulus and everything, but their head was also firmly cushioned from side to side, with cushions. And I think that if someone's head is cushioned, that could also lead to having more relaxed or a higher rate of relaxation period. So that could potentially also add to why people rated having far more relaxing experiences while watching ASMR than baseline experiences. So that could potentially be a confounder. It could also just be that you're just genuinely relaxed, because ASMR is typically relaxing. But it is something to also be careful with in this study. But ultimately, I think that it's a pretty thorough study. It's the first of its kind as of, I believe it was published in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. It's pretty recent, so I don't know if there has been any more strides in researching the biological underpinnings of ASMR. But I will be linking that below. It has figures and tables that one can look at. It has all of the reported the cerebral structures that are in discussion. I decided to omit discussing the cerebral structures only because there's such jargon that they're not even discussing, like, oh, this is the parietal lobe, oh, this is the prefrontal cortex, or whatever. It's legitimately, I would say it's acronyms, but I don't even know if they're acronyms, but they're minor sections of the brain that I have no idea how to identify, and I'm not going to pretend that I know how to identify them. So I'll leave the study in the description below.